live again. It is Easter, the 20th of April, 2025. Here with you again on Sunday evening. We've got a very, very busy show after a very, very busy week. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court's transgender ruling that's caused complete chaos everywhere. In the following, well, yesterday there were big protests in London that we're going to look at that turned violent. Did you hear about the Spice Girls? Well, we're going to talk about the Space Girls today, and we're going to ask, did they really go to space or not? It looks very, very suspect. So we're going to look at some of the evidence there. We've got the US now illegally harvesting data on kids, which is a big concern. We're going to talk about whether it's happening over here or not. And we're going to talk about our Idiot of the Week this week, our new segment, which, well, as I'm sure Debbie will agree, there's normally lots of candidates. We could make a show separately on that, but we're going to talk about that. But anyway, without any further ado, let's roll that intro and get down to business. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us again. I'm Martin Costello, joined by my co-host, Debbie Hicks. Good evening, Debbie.
Hello, Martin. How are you? Okay?
Very well, thanks. How was your Easter Sunday?
Oh, very quiet. Yeah. Nothing exciting. What about yourself?
I've been stuffing myself full of Easter eggs today, so...
I did, you know, I shouldn't have it because of my medical condition at the moment. I did have a little bit of chocolate.
You're allowed today. It's definitely very much the law. Well, we'll get started on our first story anyway. Now, this is quite a big one. This week, the UK Supreme Court unanimously ruled on Wednesday that transgender women do not fall under the category of women, which upset a lot of people. It went to the, like I said, it went to the High Court, and they looked to seek for clarification on Britain's 2020 Equality Act. But they stated that it only applies to biological women or biological sex. Now, I'm just going to play this video here just to give you guys a bit of context, and then we are going to discuss what happened. You have to bear with me. I'm trying to get it going here. So, just about to play a YouTube video. Just hang on with me. This, you just can't get the staff here, but we'll be playing any moment now. Women.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Very happy ladies there.
Heroes! Absolute heroes, all of them.
For women's rights are human rights. This isn't over yet.
It's just fantastic. You know, this is a victory for biology, for common sense, for reality. It's definitely a victory for lesbians as well. And it was specifically mentioned in the case how lesbians have been disadvantaged by this idea that maybe a man could be a woman and could be a lesbian if he had a certificate. And the ruling just absolutely blew that out of the water.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted that this ruling has clarified the law in the way that women's activists and lesbian rights activists like myself wanted.
Yes. If you've got a piece of paper that says you're anything different, you can wipe your bum with it.
That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
There's some interesting signs there, actually, Debbie. Like, it was a big part of the lesbian community as well, who were obviously against it. And we spoke about this before the show, actually. And we discussed how about, in the 70s and 80s, the genuine gay, lesbian and bi community were very concerned about this T being added to their agenda. But what did you personally make of the ruling, and should it have got to the High Court really? Because that's the highest court in the land.
Yes, it's really interesting. I didn't know this was in the High Court until the ruling. I didn't know anything about it. I haven't been following it closely. Obviously, we were aware of all the debate and controversy about this over the last few years. To me, I think it's really good news because I think everything's been blurred for women the last few years. To the point where, I've noticed when you go out, and I know this is contentious debate. We even had this debate during the election, didn't we, when we joined a group online? And I remember raising this point, and that some of the people in that community didn't like what I have to say. But I think there are some blurred lines. There have been blurred lines for women when they go into spaces that should be female spaces and have always been female spaces, like changing rooms. We've talked a lot about being arrested by the police, things like body searches, which are not nice for anybody to go through, even if it's done by a woman. But, the fact that could be done by, say, for instance, a transgender police officer. That's a man basically doing that to a woman, and vice versa, the other way around. And so all these things have become very blurred. And I think for women, that means that their rights have been blurred, and that for a lot of women don't feel safe. That's happened. Certainly for me, it's like do you remember years ago, Martin, if you went out, I don't know, and you went to the toilet, when men and women's toilets were always separate. Whereas now, because of this blurring that we've seen over the years, it's like if you go into a service station on the motorway, often the women's toilets will have male attendants in them, things like that. I don't know if that's going to change. I'm not sure, but everything's kind of become unisex, hasn't it, in that way? I think they call it unisex. Changing rooms as well. I've had cases, and I'm not saying there's anything to do with being transsexual, but I'm talking about how lines have been blurred. But I've had cases, as I'm sure women have, where I've gone into public changing rooms, and I've seen sort of men walking past that can look through, and it's, I just think all of this has become blurred, and I think this is good news that it's been clarified. Because it then makes it very clear for employers, for people in retail, in shops, in businesses, public spaces, that there has to be a separation. And it kind of reaffirms that, because what I understand from this ruling is nothing has changed. The courts can't bring in new laws. Courts just apply the law. That's all they do. So all that judge is saying is he's looked at all the law. He's looked at the Human Rights Act, he's looked at the Equalities Act and probably other legislation, and said that this is what a woman is, and these are women's rights. And it, common sense, I'm sorry, let's look in the dictionary. This is what defines a woman. And he actually said, if you watch the footage, he said it doesn't affect people that are transgender. Exactly. It doesn't affect their rights. They've still got rights against discrimination. So that's
what I'm confused about. They're claiming this certain group are oppressed now, and that's not the case at all. But it's what like I said in that video I just showed, that there was a big lesbian community there who were concerned about this, because we know in the past that these such people have claimed to change sex so they can get access to women's spaces, women's sports, even, as we've seen, and unfairly we've seen it in the Olympics. A transgender person beating up a female basically in boxing, there's a totally unclear advantage there. And of course, in some cases as well, we've seen them get access to children. And these are sort of issues that the gay and lesbian community were concerned about over the 70s and 80s, and managed to, to keep this out. But I guess it's in that period they've seen, I think you alluded to earlier, Debbie, they've gone soft, haven't they, on a lot of these things, and they've allowed this sort of thing to infiltrate again, which is a problem. Because, of course, there are people who are genuinely born, with who could be born in the wrong body. There's no disputing that whatsoever, And those genuine people actually probably don't want to be involved with such things, They live very quiet lives. It's the same like with gay people, a lot of them don't want to get involved with the LGBT thing because, you know, a lot of them see it as gone too far, and they just want to live their lives and be accepted by everyone and not standing out and being marginalized.
No.
So is for that ruling to come out, it was quite surprising the reaction it got, really. Did it surprise you, like, I suppose, the way that there was such a big, I suppose, backlash against it as well?
No, I suppose it hasn't surprised me, because I think it's I think the other side of the coin is, and I'm not saying this is an issue, as I've just made clear, I think it's you know, I think it's been deliberately blurred. The lines have been deliberately blurred by politicians, by, you know, all that stuff where Keir Starmer said, you know, you don't have to be a biological woman to be a woman. I think politicians have deliberately blurred all this. I think the media has deliberately blurred all this for years. I have to say, I think it's been used as a bit of a culture war as well. You know, we always talk about this every week, don't we, about things that divide us. And exactly. It's, you know, and I'm not saying we shouldn't feel strongly, I've just expressed my opinion, but I also feel it's been part of a culture war, which ultimately pits women against men as well, doesn't it? I think in some ways. And I hate to make it that minorities should have rights protected. I'm not saying that, but we're talking about women as a majority here, biological women that have, you know, we're slowly seeing all the rights that those suffragettes, you know, those statues that have been attacked.
Yeah,
that they fought for. They're watching as all these rights are being eroded, and
that's the irony of it, though, isn't it? When you've seen all that, you've had those genuinely brave women, the suffragettes, doing all that, and really all their hard work is just being reversed and destroyed. It's an insult to such people, really.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. And I also think, you know, it's a huge debate to get onto here, and I appreciate there's lots of things we're probably not touching on, and I'm sure we'll get that in the comments. But I also think, you know, we often get this attack if you're not looking at this from a sociological perspective. Well, actually, can I just comment on that? Because I used to teach sociology, so I want to comment on this. There's a whole area of sociology that no one looks at. There's an area of sociology that says, you know, people that want to identify or become a man or a woman, whatever, you know, but there's also a lot of sociology that suggests that this construction, if you like, it's like a construction, it's like an idea that's been created of the fact that you can just become a woman, or a man can become a woman can become a man. It's been a kind of an ideal that's been constructed by society and by the media, to the fact that I think there might be some people that have been so conditioned to, I don't know, I'll give you an example. I mean, you've got children, and lots of people are listening. Most children go through, it's very natural as they're growing up, a stage. My son did the same, where they explore gender. So I don't know, boys might put mummy's high heels on, girls might play with boys' toys, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be a man or a woman. It doesn't mean anything at all. Normal parents. I remember my son going through the same, and he's straight. Not that I think he's got a girlfriend, but he's straight, you know, and he's male, and he knows he's male. You know, it doesn't mean anything. But if you turn it into something, and say, well, that means you're playing with, I don't know, you're a girl and you're playing with boys' toys, you're a boy.
Or a tomboy,
Start defining them and labeling them as that, and, you know, that's their identity. They're going to grow up to think, that's who I am.
Yeah.
So I think there's been this whole sociological process going on the last 10, 15 years. And I think even celebrities, you know, you see them, don't you, with their children that they're saying are trans when they're, what, I don't know, 5, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I think that's another part of it no one's discussing, is that's been part of it as well. So
and of course in the schools as well, the kids have been indoctrinated with this system, and when they're learning, like, there's like God knows how many, like, these genders that they had. There was like loads of different ones depending on something, totally inappropriate stuff for children, and done nothing when they're but confuse themselves, you know, because like you said, when you grow up, we've all been there, we go through different changes and things, you know, your mind's all over the place and all that. And it's just totally inappropriate to have this sort of information in front of kids. We'll be telling them things like that all this is, you know, just completely normal. Most people like that, you know, only a small fraction of the population have who may be like transgender, you know, and they deserve all the support and help, you know, that they need and stuff to do what they need to do.
Because
they
are genuinely,
most people are.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What I was going to say is, because to me, if someone is genuinely, you know, got different chromosomes or something that makes them feel that they're in the wrong body, I think who would genuinely want to put anybody through surgery to change their body? We've seen all the trauma that some of these people have gone through that have then realized, well, actually, you know, I don't want to be whatever. We're hearing of all these cases now, aren't we? You know, so you know, and it's kind of been normalized and pushed like there's nothing wrong with it to go through that. And yeah, it's a huge topic, as I said, and I know Martin and I probably can't touch on it all, but I'm really pleased with the ruling, and I just hope it kind of clarifies. You know, I think they've already said now that the police have to do these things separately again, like they used to. It's like when you go to the airport, Martin, even things like that. I mean, I've had men, they're not supposed to do it, come up to do, you know, that thing they do in an airport now, which to me is wrong anyway, but that's another topic, where they come up if the buzzer goes off. And they, you know, I've had men come up to do that to me. And it's sort of got blurred in terms of women and men. It's like we haven't got those spaces anymore, and I find it really, I'm
just normalising that. You know, that's what's got so perverted over the last, I'd say, 5, 6, 7 years. You know, this whole sexual thing, it's gone into deviancy, a lot of it. We've had quite a lot of comments about this, actually. So should we just whip things now quickly? Ollie's commented, hopefully, Ollie, you'll be on very soon. Maybe next week. It'd be great to have you on the show. We spoke before. Ollie said, at last, common sense prevails. We should never be made to feel we have to bend the knee and erase history for 1% of the population. Yeah, that's a great point. And Ollie himself is gay, and he agrees with that. Elaine Venable says, sorry, but I wouldn't be using any changing rooms where a man can see with women getting changed. Yeah, same with toilets. Women should have their own separate from men. Women are entitled to privacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's surely a basic basic right for most people. James says, men are men, women are women. Whether you fancy me or women fancy women is up to them. It's their right, but they're something mad. Anyway, yeah, if they're born or female, that's it. I mean, yeah, you can't change. That's what happened. You can't just suddenly can't change science, you know. That's the basic ruling of this, you know. What I mean, because men and women are actually structured differently, you know, aren't they? Like, especially around the pelvic area. There's I think if you dug someone up 1,000 years later, I think they can tell whether they're male or female, because obviously women's legs can bend more than men's, and there's other different things as well. So you just can't sort of change that. Yeah, we spoke about the indoctrination, but Ryan claims they're not indoctrinated. Fair enough. That's you're entitled to that opinion. Steve thinks
maybe not everybody. I think that's the point we touched on, but I think there has been a lot more of a kind of a focus on this with the media and politicians and the education system.
No, exactly. Beverly talking about her granddaughter. She's not sure what direction to go, because obviously the schools are pushing it, and the kids, because they're in that environment as well. It's like Stockholm syndrome, isn't it? So this is where the indoctrination comes in, really. They think, oh, this is the cutting edge of learning stuff, when sadly it may have been, but it's not anymore. That's the problem. They're pushing all these agendas and things. You know, just stick to teaching science, English and maths. You know, don't get involved with these sorts of things, you know. It upsets, you know, there's many communities in this country as well, you know, different religions that don't want this, you know. It's not up to teachers to be pushing this onto kids as well. And that's where Avril says, yeah, totally agree, keep it out of the classroom. Definitely keep it out of schools, changing names of pastime without parent consent. And that's the thing as well, you know, these authorities quite often have got too much control over our children, and that's why homeschooling's getting so big now, you know. A lot of parents are taking their kids out. But just as last comment here, Billy Forrest, I believe I'm a woman going to women's change room. I like watching them get naked All right, yeah, he's being, yeah, he's saying, pretending how someone might feel.
I think
But-
someone's having a bit of a bit
which
mocking.
you're entitled to do, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course,
Well, actually, I'd like to respond to that, okay, because someone's obviously making a joke out of it, like what we're talking is nonsense. I think that's what they're trying to say. But actually, I think if you ask a lot of women about changing rooms or going into toilets, there's quite a lot of women that have had bad experiences. Now, and what did I say at the beginning as well, before anybody jumps onto that? I'm not saying that's directly linked to trans women. I'm not necessarily saying there's a link to that. What I was saying at the beginning is all these lines between male and female have been blurred, and this has been part of. That's what I was saying, and I think it's actually quite serious. I don't know if Martin agrees with me. Women feel those spaces have been taken away from them, and I think we do feel that. So it's
absolutely. You know, who wants you know, and it's not just like women. It's your children. Imagine you're like a 5-year-old child. You send daughter going to the toilet, you know, and then someone who potentially be a sexual predator's been there as well. You know, we've just got to draw the line somewhere, common sense, you know. And that's, you know, and hopefully that's what's being done now. You know, everyone should be able to live in peace, do what they want to do. Nobody's saying that, but nobody should get special rights. And, you know, and we should all feel protected when doing things like that. Now, I just want to move on quickly to the next bit, because following this, there was a big protest in London yesterday. I'm just going to show some images from this now. And of course, once again, it's the left, the far left, isn't it? Unite the union, stand up to racism, the same old mob out protesting, but they were behaved very badly indeed, vandalizing statues and things. Just take a look at this video. LGBT rights, right? They never didn't matter. They never didn't matter. No one says they didn't, though. JK rolls with middle obsession. Okay. Oh. All in. So basically, they were some of the scenes that we saw there yesterday in London. So you've had these people going out, actually, pretending to care and spread love and all that. And then we see the real agenda behind it all, isn't it? It's they like that divisive stuff. They couldn't give a toss about a lot of these things, really. And they go out, like, defacing things. Debbie, do you think that's going to really help their cause, behaving like that?
Well, I mean, it's I do find it bizarre that they've defaced statues. I hope they were prosecuted. I don't know. I'm sure there's some people that were there that say that doesn't represent all of them. I'm sure that's the case as well. But it's turned quite nasty, hasn't it? And as I said, very divisive. But it shouldn't be divisive because actually nothing's changed. It's just been clarified. It's just really, that's the thing, isn't it? Nothing's changed. There's been no new laws that have been brought in. It's just because all of this is, as we said at the beginning, has been blurred, and it was taken to the High Court by, I think it was a Scottish group, wasn't it? Women's
Exactly.
group.
But I think Claire's probably right. Actually, he's talking about Antifa again. It's the same old people. Actually, I was surprised there were more masks actually, but it's these same bunch that turn up to all these different events all the time. It's the same ones we've had them in where I live in Swindon. These same people, they get paid by basically George Soros and the likes. But hopefully, this is all going to come to an end soon because the Doge in the US has stopped a lot of funding to these extremist groups. But it just disgusts me really how they could just pick something like that, anything really, just again to cause division, right? And they were so misguided. If you look at some of those, what they're saying, like they basically said, like trans people like being thrown under a bus and all this, and not being cared for, and that's not the case at all. Yeah,
No,
they're just totally deluded, and they'll do. It just scares me because there's so many brainwashed idiots out there who don't look into the facts. But I expect you're the same, Debbie. We've gone up to try and talk to these people before, and you can't have a debate with them. There's no discussion. They're just radicalized.
I've got a background of being involved with the Labour movement years ago. I've just said this many times on this show. I don't see myself as aligned with any political movement or group anymore because I think everything's controlled personally. But anyway. But I've seen, the point I was going to make is I've seen what happens with some of these groups. And don't get me wrong, there's some very genuine people in trade unions, in some of these movements, but a lot of it has been hijacked by these issues. Like I said, culture wars and some of these issues where the real issues, which we keep talking about, where are the trade unions on those issues? Where are the trade unions? Where are the trade unions attacking the Labour Party in a big way? We haven't heard much, have we, about what they've done to the pensioners, what they've done to people that are not getting PIP anymore, that are having the disabled having their money taken away from them, about war, about all this money going off the war everywhere and weapons. Where are the trade unions in Swindon attacking the awful Will Stone? Hello, Swindon Advertising. You ignored my letter, by the way. Isn't that funny? I was the only person, that was Martin, who called out the politicians in Swindon as warmongers, and we've been proven right. Why didn't you print my letter? Where are you, the trade unions and the Labour Party in Swindon, for people and their rights and our money? But instead, and this is why people get angry, we see you gathering in London on this issue. What about all the all the women, the biological women that are in trade unions? And I know some of them that are ex-Labour as well. I know some of them that have left the Labour Party because of things like this, because they don't agree with this. They don't agree, who are happy about this ruling in the High Court. So priorities, where are you? Like you used to be years ago on the real issues. Where are you on the real issues?
Yeah, they've been stamped out by these controlled groups, I'd say, these controlled operations. And it's funny how they get all the mainstream media coverage, isn't it? They got their eyes and things, and all the papers to be over it, or sometimes like the 10 or 15 people out. They get like the Guardian reporting, who we know are paid to print rubbish, and the BBC and all that. But then, like of course, over the lockdown period, we saw literally hundreds of thousands of people marching, and there weren't a dicky bird anywhere. But thank God, we got that.
And I was going to say, sorry, but we're calling out these groups of people that love to march on issues. Where were they representing all these trade unions? Not one trade union. In fact, they did the opposite. They attacked their members that didn't want to wear face coverings, didn't want to be vaccinated. That was their human right to choose not to do that. They did not support them. They attacked them. Where were the trade unions for all their members then that were male or female or trans? Where were they? And this is the thing that annoys me about these issues, is that, these issues take over. And the real issue to me, whether you're trans or you're gay or you're lesbian or you're male or female, the real issues we're all facing is that we can't afford to live. There's not enough jobs for our young people in the future. There's going to be no jobs, in fact, with what they're doing. with the technocracy that's kicking in. Look at the NHS. No one can get care in the NHS anymore. I've just been through a hospital and I've seen how bad it is. It's just impossible to get any treatment, any operations, to get a doctor's appointment. You know, our schools are in a mess. You know, these are the issues that affect trans, gay, straight. You know what? I'm sorry, trans people as well, but why? These are the issues you should be concerned about. That's the real issue that we all face. And I get a little bit fed up with just, you know, something that to me is, like I said, nothing's changed.
No.
And it's
business as usual with them, isn't it? It's disgusting, really.
Let's have a bit of a rant.
No, go for it. I think most of the population would agree with you there, Debbie. You're absolutely spot on there. Right, we'll move to our next story now. Now, this week, an all-female astronaut crew went up into space. And it got worldwide attention, of course, because I think some of the astronauts was, I know Katy Perry. I don't know who else was on it. She's like a singer. They're all like singers and actors, basically.
Someone that knows Oprah Winfrey. I think that's about all I managed to gather. And I think it's Amazon.
Jeff Bezos' Amazon is that the origin thing.
Yeah.
And they went up in something that could only like really be described as like a penis, really, wasn't it? It was like, if you look at the shape of it, you'll see on the video, it was absolutely, you know, ridiculous. But it come out since then, though. People were actually debating whether he actually went to space or not. So I just want to play this video now because someone reckons it's a load of nonsense, and he reckons he's got evidence to prove it as well. Just watch this.
Something is definitely not adding up, and I'm gonna be the one to say it. Somebody gotta be lying. I was watching the live footage from when the capsule came from space. Y'all gonna see it too. But somebody that was in the capsule opened the door, opened the hatch from inside the capsule, y'all. So when the door opened from the capsule, a lady that was standing by Jeff Bezos ran over to the door and said something, probably like, don't do that. You can't do that. It's showing. Don't open it. Don't open it. But it was already too late, y'all. It was on live feed. But you know, they still had to try to play it off somehow. So the people from the live crew that was talking was like, Jeff Bezos is about to open the door from the outside. He about to open the hatch. And then Jeff Bezos went over there with some little key or whatever. And then he act like he was opening the door when we all just seen that the door opened from the inside. That's not supposed to happen. You cannot open that capsule from the inside. It's pressurized. It's closed from the outside and locked and sealed. So how did they open it? Somebody on that jump opened it. So you mean to tell me they got blasted up in space? Something is definitely not adding up.
Revelations there. I mean, what did you think about the whole thing? So I didn't know they was going up into space, but then you obviously found out it's all over the mainstream media, all our favorite outlets. What was your take on the whole thing? Was it this brave women pushing the frontiers here, do you think?
No, not at all. My first impression, I'm going to be honest here, and I obviously, I'm just, as soon as I saw it, I just thought they were mocking us. I'm sorry, with, as you said, this sort of phallic-shaped object. That was my first thought when I saw it going into space, and then it just happens to have a load of women inside as well. Who are these women? I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not a physician. I'm not a scientific expert. I have to get Mr. Piers Corbyn on for that. He's an astrophysicist. But doesn't it take many, many years of training and being prepared to just, unless I'm missing something, going into space? I mean, and all of a sudden it's just like they were going up for a quick, 10 minutes as well. Think, really? 10 minutes? So as soon as I saw it, I thought it sounds like a load of nonsense. And then obviously it came out that, as you said, the door was being opened the wrong way. And then there was another, I don't know if that's real, but there was a picture of like a shop mannequin's hand in the window. And it's honestly, I just feel like a lot of these things now that they're just mocking us and having a big laugh at us. I really do. Because what does it do? I mean, I know we're talking about it, Martin, but people talk about these things for ages and forget about everything else, don't they? So
that's probably what it's about, Debbie, just to like sidetrack things. And that's what I mean. Like, why people watch the mainstream media still is beyond me, because all they do is just distract people. It's always look over there whilst they're doing something over here all the time, isn't it? So when you see things like this, I'm always, I say to people, look, see what else is going on, because there's normally a big cover up there. But I was just shocked about the amount of attention got. But it did get a lot of flack, really, and lots of memes and stuff come out mocking it as well. And there's a video as well I'll play in a moment. Someone made a song about it, which mocking it. And there was a great meme going around saying about being something about from Amazon being returned back to Earth or something. But I just something so odd about it, though. What is going on? What are they preparing us for? They're hiding something. I just didn't think how are we supposed to think she's brave or something? She's got a new album coming out. What is it all about? But I don't think they read the public quite well anymore, because I think a lot of people actually think a lot of these so-called celebrities are fools, really. The way they were pushing stuff in 2020, all of this, people waking up now and they can see that they're losing their grasp on power. Particularly, we've got the internet now, and there's a lot of people that make content like ourselves, and they can see other things. They don't hold these people in such high regard anymore. And a lot of these people have probably been out to Epstein Island as well. We've still not seen the list that's come out for that, which we're waiting for. So they are kind of mocking us, but I don't think they realise that they're actually being mocked by us as well. I think it's laughable, really, that anyone could actually believe that happened. But
exactly. It's very transparent in a very obvious way. I think this is the difference as well. Is it just me? But now, and of course, there's been question marks over the years about all kind of space exploration. But landing on the moon, of course, has been so much talked about that was fake. And that's enough thing to get into. And I'm not saying that didn't look dodgy back then when you look at the footage. But even so, is it just me? But it's almost like now, in the last few years, particularly since the lockdown and what I call the scandemic, the pandemic, is that it's almost like they're not hiding it anymore, that they're making things up. They're actually showing us very clearly, look, this is lie and we're making it up to you. Whereas in the past, things were a bit more hidden and a little bit more put over a little bit more in a convincing way. Is that, or is it just that we've woken up? I don't know. What is it, Martin? I don't know.
I think obviously the internet now, this dissemination of data and information, it's like a double-edged sword to them. They couldn't control it how they wanted to, and now everything is just becoming chaos to them, and no one can really understand what's true and what's fake anymore. Especially now, like they got technology like these deep fake AI things. So they can make videos of us saying different stuff and making us look bad and all that. And we could be tricked by other videos that we've seen and all that. It's just the whole thing is just a big fantasy world we're living in, really. And that's what's so disturbing, I think. But, it always has been in a way. But the fantasy, before we've had this transition, before the internet, these so-called stars, and the mainstream media papers, people believed it all. But now, as time's going on, we can see that we were being lied to about many, many things, all these different wars and things we were dragged into that turned out to be, a lot of the time, the United States bullying other countries and stripping them of assets as well. So the whole thing's definitely coming apart. And I think Ollie sums up here, the veils are falling as well, which is
absolutely. It's all, maybe it's a mixture of things. It's just, I feel maybe it's just because I was younger and more naive. I just feel things are so much more obvious now. Like that, space, what we're talking about. It just, absolutely ridiculous, like Star Trek outfits and coming down with your hair and makeup perfect. It's like, for goodness sake, I mean, what's going on in science lessons at schools? Because I always look at how people respond to these things, because that tells me so much about where we are as a society. And I was looking at some of the footage and the commentary on TikTok, because TikTok's really great for looking at the younger generation and how they see things. Probably Instagram, maybe not so much anymore, I don't know. And honestly, I was reading the comments and there were so many young people that actually believed, Martin, that this space exploration was real. And there's me thinking back to, well, what's, what we used to learn in science at school. It's like, what are they learning in science now? Were they just not paying attention? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, they're being bombarded. The poor kids now, though, like on TikTok and all this, they're seeing all stuff. So, we're lucky enough to be grown up in the world before the internet and after, which, is we're on a really funny timeline, really, because a lot of people hadn't had that. And that's a massive advantage to us because we knew what the world was like before the internet. And of course, now we can sift out a lot of this BS because we can see what's being fed to people, and that's why, a lot of us, you kind of more expect really for sifting out all this sorts of nonsense.
That's very true. Yeah. I mean, sorry, no, I was just going to say, I think that's a really good observation because I think the kids that have grown up, like my son's generation that have grown up with seeing things on the screen from a child to when they reach adulthood, everything has already been blurred for them in terms of imagery, videos. That's all they've seen is things that are altered, edited all the time, so that when they get to 21, they don't know what's real and what isn't. Whereas we looking back at an age when we didn't have that, so we can see. It's quite worrying, isn't it? And I suppose the argument there is if you've got kids and you're watching, is just to try and get them off screens and computers and mobile phones as much as possible.
No, absolutely.
Back to books. Back to reading books like that's what we used to do. Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's what there's so much wealth and knowledge then we should never use that. Just conscious of the time now, because obviously we want to get on to our favourite bit, the end of the week, but just another story, Debbie, that you picked up on about the Google tools that are now required for classwork. So this was quite interesting about a lawsuit that's filed last week and accuses Google of harvesting personal data on students across the country. This is deeply concerning because, again, there's been a lot of trouble. Google's been a lot of trouble before, actually, about talking about what they share. And we know, like, data harvesting's a big industry. It's quite sudden, isn't it, Debbie? And you're quite right to pick the story up here. Where do you think this is leading to?
Really worrying, isn't it? I'm not quite sure where this case is in what court it's in the States. I can't quite read that print from here. But yes, it's really worrying. I think we're all aware of data harvesting, how it's happening all the time, whatever we do, when we go to the shops, what we're buying is being recorded, being sold off. Data when you shop online, all that data is being sold off. Everything we do is kind of data now and is being sold off. But the problem is that we're not consenting to any of this, are we? And it's actually unlawful. It's hugely unlawful, not just in the States, but here as well, that we don't consent. It's like when we walk into supermarkets, this is another thing that's never been taken up here. And we're being recorded on screens, or when you're recorded on a screen, and that's all being recorded and sold off. I mean, they lie and say it isn't, but it is. Where do we consent to that? There's no consent with any of this. And I find it really scary when it comes to our children in particular, because there's also informed consent. And how can children give any kind of informed consent when they're being told at school to go onto Google Chrome, which is what this case is about? Kids, pupils, students in the United States are, and they are doing it here as well, are using Google services as part of their lessons. And the teachers are facilitating this. And all this data is being sold about our children. And I find it really scary. I think parents need to get together and ask questions to the school, like, where have we consented to this as parents? I think, parents need to get together. I mean, when my son was at school, Martin, when he started secondary school at the age of 11, I discovered that they were asking, I don't know if you're aware of this, it's happening all around the country, fingerprints. Children have to give their fingerprints and they record them on technology to get their school dinners. So when they get to the queue for school dinners,
biometric.
They put their fingers down to get their school dinner, so that you've got like a credit file where the parents pay. And when I found out, this was about 7 years ago, My son was about 7 years ago. I went absolutely mad. I thought, this is horrific, because I knew instantly that data's being sold. Oh, no, it's not, head teacher would say. And I kicked up a fuss, and they allowed my son to take money in. So, you know, there are options there, but most parents are exercising these rights and going up to the teachers. So what I say to parents is, you know, go to your teacher, go to the teachers, go to the head teacher and say, what technology are you using at school to teach my children, my child, and how is it being stored and being sold, and start asking questions. And even better, if you can do it, get your kids out of school and home educate them. I know it's so hard, it really is, but there are lots of groups now that support each other as well.
Yeah, Swindon.
There's ex-teachers in those groups as well, where they can educate them as a group. So if you're working, you know, there's ways around it. But so there's that option, or, you know, getting together with other parents and asking questions. Because if they're doing that in the States with Google, I can assure you, because I used to teach in schools as well, and they're using all this technology, they're doing it here. And
I mean, we spoke for the show actually about this, Debbie, and you know, we're saying like GCHQ, you know, they'll be monitoring things like this at the moment, and you know, it's the course, the software and the technology's there to monitor everything. They don't need someone sitting there listening in on it or watching this video. The software there now, just listening, tracking every single thing and picking out keywords and stuff. You know, it's that is what's happening. We're under a surveillance society, and people don't realise it. They think we're living in freedom, but we're not, you know, and people are being controlled and manipulated so much. And, you know, the biggest thing that they've done is target the kids, which is really, really low, you know, but that's what they're doing to control and indoctrinate the next generation. You know, they're forcing kids with some things and ideologies, saying, oh, yeah, it's a lot easier, just use your guard of your finger. But they don't realise that things like cash is actually the most basic form of democracy, because you can control where to spend that. Things like they could suddenly, if you haven't paid your school dinner money, that's it. Your fingerprint won't work anymore. There's no food for you, you know. But if you had cash or whatever, you could do that. Or, you know, if you should be here, you'd be naughty or whatever. If it's digital, they can switch it off. That's the problem. That's what we're trying to explain to people, really, and how important it is to keep using cash and things like this, and keep off the digital surveillance system, because the consequences of that, you can see what's going in China, you know, and they've got total control over you. As soon as we leave that most basic freedom, we are going to be absolutely screwed, you know. It's the same with our reliance on the farmers and things like that. You know, people don't realise, you know, we are literally on the cusp of absolute, I suppose, a living prison, basically. And you know,
absolutely, It's no, I was just going to say, what you're describing, or just listening to what you're saying, and that was my thought that was going through my head. They're conditioning everybody, cultivating, grooming, if you like, everybody to live in a kind of big open prison. I think, to be honest, we're already living in an open prison, but it's going to get worse. The wars are going to come in even more. And I think that's what it is. And, you know, our children are growing up in schools. I spent a short time teaching in a school. I used to mostly teach older students, but I did spend a short time teaching in a school. And I was absolutely horrified at what's going on in our schools. And when my son went to secondary school, it is like what I'd call almost kind of like prison rules in some of our schools now. It wasn't like that when I was at school, Martin. It was quite liberal, actually, when I was at school. They have to get passes now to go to the toilet. And my son used to come home from secondary school when he was 11. And actually, I know this sounds horrible, and I'm sure some parents can empathise with this. And because he couldn't go to the toilet all day, he'd like start wetting himself, because they would never let him, unless you had a medical condition and a pass. They wouldn't let the kids go to the toilet during class. So there's all these rules now that they brought in, and it's really controlled. And I just think, you know, the fingerprinting as well, all of it, it's like prison culture. And I think we've got to think, haven't we? This is what our kids are going through now. What's it going to be like in 10 years' time? Yeah. What are they going to be doing to our kids? You know?
Ollie hits it on the head. That's how you start a reset. You go with the children. So obviously they're conditioning children now for the future. And of course, we're the crazy old parents who don't know any better. But, you know, it's our parents that like fought for our freedom, you know, and we're the ones who are still trying to honour. They didn't spill their blood for no reason, you know.
No,
So,
no,
we're not
absolutely.
asking, I say it quite a lot. We're not asking people to storm the beaches of Normandy here. We're asking people like to do basic things like use cash, try and buy local where you can. You know, that is our freedom that we're fighting for.
Yeah,
and something we're trying to preserve there.
Absolute non-compliance is what everyone can do. Well, everyone can be an activist, that everyone can do those things, especially in today's culture, because it's so oppressive to be an activist, as we know. But you know, you cannot comply. And the problem we've got at the moment, and we talked about this last week, and we touched on it today, is that the way they're bringing in digital ID, which is what they'll use to control our money, is that it's creeping. It's not going to just be a bill that says you've got digital ID from ... date. It's not going to be like that. They're bringing it in. The corporations are bringing it in, and the government's kind of peppering around it with legislation, which is what the data access bill is currently in Parliament. That's nearly made its way through Parliament. It's really worrying. And the way it's going to work, I mean, I'll give you an example. Today, I tried to log into my eBay account. I hardly use eBay. I haven't used it in ages. I log in and I wanted to have a look at my account. And when I tried to log in, it said, oh, you've got to add a new phone number. And I thought, okay, because I've got two phones. Probably knows I've got two phones. I've got all the, you know. So put my new phone number in, get the code, and you get a code, put the code in. And then, oh, you have got to provide us with passport, driving license, or if you've got ID, photo ID, and then upload, I think you can use these apps, can't you, a photograph of yourself. And I thought, no, I am not doing that just to use blimmin' eBay. No way am I doing that. And I just think that's what's creeping in. I think they're doing that with a lot of things now online. Yeah. That is what's creeping in. Online shopping, you've got to have, and it'll all merge together. And all of a sudden, we've got digital ID and we don't even know it.
And that's what we mentioned before. They like said, like, oh, you won't be able to drive soon because you haven't got your digital ID. So they're just basically forcing people to do it. I mean, if that's not totalitarian state, I don't know what is. You know, people need to start waking up quick to this. This is not acceptable in any stretch of the imagination. You know, just because convenience, that's not good enough. You know, we're quite happy to have paper form or whatever, because, like, you know, what we're trying to hammer the message home really is once it's digital, they've got complete control over you, and they don't need any. You know, they can switch you off and buying food and all these different things straight away. You know, and that's where the problem lies, and they know it. You know, that's all a part of their agenda. You know, that's what it is with electric cars. They know that you can't travel far in them. They can geofence you, all these different things. You know, so even like keeping combustion engines is a big part of freedom. You know, it's got something to do with the environment.
It's not just, it's not about being petrol heads or, you know, like, you know, some of the left, they like to call you, you know, ignorant and wanting just to, it's not about that. It's about freedom, isn't it? Because everything's electrified, you know, smart motorways, smart cars that are all linked up to the grid. They can shut off your travel. It's about freedom. It's not, you know, it's not about fossil fuels and it's not about climate change, but another debate. We've had that debate before anyway, haven't we? But,
big time, but yeah, it's all about control. But no, well, this is the time now. Yeah, we're running a little bit. I was going to put Idiot of the Week on.
Right.
This I'll only show a bit of this because this is our new feature now, Idiot of the Week. So perhaps Debbie, I'm sure you've got a massive long list, and perhaps next time you can pick one. But I picked this one this week of Dawn French. Really got a lot of reaction on our page because Dawn French was very funny in like The Vicar of Dibley, and was it French and Saunders she did?
That's very funny, wasn't she? Yeah, I haven't seen her on TV. I don't watch TV, but I haven't seen her in ages. So
no, and she was married to Lenny Henry, I think. That's since they split up.
She was married to Lenny Henry. Yeah.
Well, I played this video the other day, and there she was acting really odd about mocking like Donald Trump and just get involved with politics again. I'll show a few seconds of it because it just winds me up really. But just check this out.
So, big orange baby in charge of it all. He's got a big nappy on. He's going, "Mummy, Daddy, please love me. You love me, yeah? Please love me. Because I've got a big country. I'm in charge. of a big country for second time, and everybody scared of me because.
That's enough for me, really. I can. I mean, again, though, it's always people getting involved in politics. You know, there she is living like in a gated community. You know, she doesn't. I think she lives down in Devon, like on a big place or something down there, and you know, she doesn't see the real issues like of our country. And there she is using her platform to mock things that she doesn't know anything about. And I picked her an idiot of the week, really, because I don't think she realizes a lot of these people, how out of touch they are actually, and how unfunny they are. You know, does she think that we're all living like the same life that she lives? You know, I should take her around Swindon and show her what real poverty and stuff looks like. Around some of the alleyways and things, and some of the sites that look absolutely awful. You know, the potholes on the road, all these different things. You know, and there she is just mocking someone like that, like our lives are some sort of a joke. But Debbie, do you think, again, though, it's those politicians, I suppose, that they get involved, for me, yeah, they get involved with things that they don't need to talk about. They're entertainers.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And we talked about this before we came on the show, didn't we? About comedians, and politics. I mean, to be honest, I think they've always been political, haven't they? It's just, I mean, that I don't know the context of that, but that, you know, snapshot that you've just shown, it was just a bit idiotic to me. If you're going to make a point, a political point, maybe do it in an intelligent way, you know, whatever it is you're trying to say, because that just comes over as quite unintelligible to me. Wasn't even funny, was it? It wasn't funny. But I also think the other end of the extreme is that when you put the TV on, which is why I don't put it on anymore, there's no comedy anymore that's political, because everyone's scared to offend politicians or different people or this or that. And do you remember that age? I remember growing up when I was talking about this earlier, Spitting Image. Who else is it? All these shows they used to rip into everybody. Everybody was ripped in. It's the way it should be. We've lost that, haven't we? It's kind of, everything's controlled. There's no comedy anymore. And we used to have such amazing comedy in this country. As you said, you know, Dawn French, you know, remember French and Saunders? They used to be so good.
Yeah.
We talk about women that are really good. You know, they were really good, but, you know, it's...
And again, they got to get involved like politics, though, and talk about things that they know nothing about. And I just find it really sad, though, you know, the way they got to do that. And like I said, things like Spit and Image are really, really funny. But nowadays, like you say, a lot of these comedians, the only reason why I reckon they actually get platforms on the BBC is because they're mocking these sort of people. It was like, do you remember Jimmy Carr? They showed a segment on the BBC. He goes, "Oh, everyone who hasn't had the you know what, put your hand up." And there's a couple of people with hand up, and he goes, "Now slap yourself in the face." Then, like, there was canned laughter put on, but they used it to shame people. They're not to take the you know what, though. You know, who's laughing now, Jimmy? Who's laughing after all those people had adverse reactions and died? You know, they've used it as a weapon. And when you see these things, it's always canned laughter. There's no really people laughing. When you go to a lot of these shows, no one's really laughing, or there's canned laughter in the background. But they're using it to politicize again, though, you know, because like you said, there's no real comedy anymore. All the good stuff's like being taken down, like you mentioned earlier. Have warnings before the shows, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mentioned as well, because this is what we were talking about, wasn't it? Just an example. Because we don't really watch TV, and I said to my husband last night, should we put something funny on to watch? And we thought we'd put some old episodes of Father Ted on. Anyone that hasn't seen Father Ted, it's worth the watch, because it just, you know, and the guy that is, you know, I know he's very political as well, isn't he? Graham Lynham. I mean, funnily enough, he talks about this issue we talked about tonight on the show in terms of women's biological rights as women. He talks about that on Twitter a lot, if you follow his Twitter. But anyway, the show at the time, which was what, early mid-90s?
Mid-90s, absolutely brilliant. I've got the box set.
Everything about Irish culture and the church, the Catholic Church, and priests, and it was hilarious. And it was a little bit of controversy at the time, but that's what you get with comedy sometimes. And some of it was a bit, you know, the episode we watched last night was when there's Chinese people on Craggy Island. And you know, Father Ted has stood in the window, and there's a little black
Hitler mustache.
he looks like Hitler, and he becomes known on the island who's been taken over by Chinese as a racist, and, and the whole episode is kind of mocking how he's got to be anti-racist, you know. So it's all these things to talk about, and how he's desperate to be seen as not racist, and it's so funny. It was setting up everything in every way, and I just think, you know, and it even said at the top of the screen, Martin, it even said this was made in 19 whatever, and you might find it offensive. It's like, what? They'd actually put that. So that's
Crazy.
it. Yeah,
they do it with Lady Fools and Horses, I think, in a lot of these programs now, which is incredible, really. So basically, you're not allowed to laugh anymore. You know, like I said, the British have always been great at mocking ourselves. We take the mickey out of ourselves, and there's no malice in it. You know, it's just things like Little Britain. There's no. I imagine that would never be shown now. But yeah, it's just crazy how quickly things have changed like that. And it's really sad that we can't have fun and a laugh, in good sense of humor and not in any like malice way or anything, So it's a real sad time.
It is, yeah.
Right. Oh, just hit an hour now, so we've gone a bit way over time. Hopefully next week, Ollie's watching. Hopefully you'll be able to pop on and join us. We don't know what the subject's going to be. We'll have to see what's going to be thrown up this next week, but I'm sure we will be back.
So Ollie's joining us for some commentary, yeah?
Yeah, Ollie's expressed an interest in coming on, so hopefully, Ollie, you'll be able to pop on the interview section next week. It'd be great to have you having your thoughts. You've been very vocal in the comments there, so I'm sure that'd be great. But no, any last thoughts, Debbie?
No, not really. Watch what the week ahead have. Have you got any more crazy news to distract us? There's Ollie. He says he's going to join us next week. Maybe Ollie, you can point out and let us know any news articles that you think we should discuss over the coming week.
There'll be plenty, I'm sure. Yeah, lots of controversy. They say a week's a long time in politics, but I tell you what, it's just we're living in a clown world at the moment. So, things are popping up left, right, and centre. But we shall call it a close there. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us on this Easter Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your night. Have a great week, and take care, everyone.
We'll see you next week. Yeah.